Welcome to tonight's presentation. So, as y'all have been chatting, this is Ty Sharrow. He's a lab mate of mine from A-State, a good friend. We go birding together a lot, and glad to have him, as he mentioned, back in Memphis. But Ty is originally from Northeast Pennsylvania, where he received his bachelor's in wildlife biology from Keystone College in 2021. And after that, he worked on several bird-related field projects across the U.S. before coming to Arkansas State, where he earned his master's this past spring, doing the work that he's going to present tonight. Now Ty works at Ducks Unlimited, as we've been talking about, and at the headquarters in Memphis as a conservation science assistant. And tonight he'll be talking about, as I mentioned, his research master's with American Kestrels in Northeast Arkansas. So Ty, go ahead and take it away.
Yes, thank you, Kevin. I'm
Mm-hmm.
actually tuning in from St. Louis right now. I'm at the AOS, American Ornithological Society's conference right now with Ducks Unlimited, and tomorrow I'll be presenting a little presentation from some of the work that I've been doing with them. But tonight I'll be talking about my research for my master's at Arkansas State University, where I studied American kestrels in the Lower Mississippi Alluvial Valley in Northeast Arkansas, looking at their nest box use for nesting and also during winter roosting, their nesting success, then also how they impact agricultural pests. So to jump right in, oop, I'm trying to advance the slide. Oh, okay. So just a little to set this up a little bit, I'm going to start off with a general background. And then I have two parts. The first study is looking at their nest box use and their nesting success, getting into that a little bit more. Then study two, that's going to be on their impacts on pests, and then wrapping up with some general conclusions from both of those studies. So I'm sure we're all aware of how important agriculture is, especially being in Arkansas. But I just want to highlight that agricultural practices are constantly evolving, trying to be as efficient and effective as possible to meet a quickly growing demand of a larger population size. And they also have to continually adapt to challenges with climate change happening that's really disrupting a lot of things. And as we learn more about best practices, they're trying to incorporate that again to be as efficient as possible. So one of the biggest challenges that faces agriculture, a tale as old as time, are agricultural pests. And pests are anything during any part of the agricultural process from seeding to while the food is in the field to storage that disrupts and harms agriculture. And pesticides are usually the most commonly method of dealing with these pests. And as I'm sure we've all also heard that there's some associated negative effects of pesticide use. For humans, pesticides are known to act as carcinogens and also disrupt endocrine, nervous, and reproductive systems. For wildlife, they have similarly poor health effects affecting animals as well. And they are also known to decrease biodiversity because many pesticides are not species specific. They just blanketly disrupt a lot of different animals where they're applied. Then they have also environmental effects across the landscape because they contaminate air, water, and soil and really get into integrated into a lot of different systems and spread across the landscape. Thinking about alternatives to pesticide use, there's integrative pest management, which is a scientific approach that emphasizes the ecological, environmental, evolutionary, and human cultural aspects of pest control to try to take a more holistic, whole pictured approach to preventing those losses from pests. Some examples of that are using pheromone lures to attract insects mainly away from pests or um, to baits and traps, then also removing vegetation to disrupt that habitat, and then using predators, taking advantage of their natural pest control services with predating other animals and scaring them off. And one perspective to consider when thinking about integrative pest management is this idea of One Health. And that's the idea that if human health is to survive, environmental health also has to survive, and we need to have healthy wildlife because we're all connected. So looking at pests, I mean, predators as pest control a little bit more. There's some common examples like releasing ladybugs into gardens to help control aphid damage. In New Zealand, they reintroduced vulnerable New Zealand falcons into vineyards and found that they were able to reduce bird pest abundances. And even bats, wrinkle-lipped bats in Thailand were able to prevent $1.2 million in crop losses annually in their rice agriculture. And that's what they're pictured in that lower photo. That's thousands and thousands of these wrinkle-lipped bats going out into those rice fields to eat insects. Thinking about another potential predator to be used to control pests is the American kestrel. I'm sure we're all very familiar with this bird. They're very beautiful and pretty common. So I hope that we've all had a chance to see one of these, but they are a widespread falcon that are found across much of North America and South America. And they prefer open habitats and they commonly occupy agricultural areas. They're also a cavity nester, an obligate one, so they need to have a cavity to nest in. And they're a really good candidate for being used in pest control because they are an opportunistic generalist predator, because they eat a wide variety of insects, small mammals, birds, even frogs and lizards. So many species that are considered agricultural pests. However, they have experienced widespread declines across much of North America. And this map here is eBird data from 2012 through 2022. And all those red dots are points where they found that kestrels are declining. And kind of all these dots are red. There's blue ones. That's where kestrels are increasing. I don't know if you can see my mouse right now, but like kind of in the upper northeast, like above Maine and Canada, there's some blue dots there, but that's really the only area that they've increased in recent years. And one idea is that having access to nesting cavities might be limiting their populations because unlike woodpeckers, they can't excavate their own holes. They have to rely on pre-existing ones. Then looking and zooming in at Arkansas specifically for areas where there's enough eBird data to estimate their population trends in Arkansas, it's all been declining. Another reason to use eBird, so that data can be used to generate maps like this. So previously, kestrels have been studied for their pest control services, specifically in cherry orchards in Michigan and Ontario. And they were found that when kestrels were present in those nest boxes, they were able to reduce small mammal and fruit-eating bird abundances. And specifically, this is key, over 5 years, for every dollar spent on building, installing, and maintaining a nest box, that translated to $84 to $357 being saved from prevented cherry losses in Michigan. So a really big return on that investment. However, this is not always the case. Kestrels were found not to reduce fruit-eating bird abundances in the Pacific Northwest in cherry orchards. So it's possible that kestrels are really kind of context-specific on their ability to impact pests. And if kestrels are going to be used for their pest control services, knowing what features when installing these nest boxes are optimal to maximize their box use for nesting, and when they are using these boxes to make sure that they're successful nesting attempts is really important to try to capitalize on those potential pest control impacts. In their literature, some people have found that orientation of the nest box matters if it's facing north, east, or west. And then some people have found that it doesn't really matter at all. You can face any way. It doesn't impact them using the box or their nest success. Habitat features do seem to matter for kestrels. Like I said, they like open areas. And some people have found that they try to avoid areas with people, with homes and stuff, while other people have found that they are quite tolerant of human disturbances. Another key aspect of nest boxes, which has largely been kind of not looked into, are kestrels using nest boxes as winter roosting sites. And winter roosting sites are really important for these birds because they offer a good protection from predators and also extreme weather in the winter. There's only been a few studies that have looked at their use, their winter roosting sites, and they found that they mainly like to use human structures like sheds and equipment buildings that they can go into. and also vegetation like just trees sitting on a tree limb as their preferred roosting site. Specifically, only 2 studies have previously looked at their use of nest boxes as winter roosting sites, which is really surprising because kestrels, there's actually been a lot of research done on them since you can easily look at them in boxes and stuff, but that's all been focused on the nesting end, not really the winter roosting side. And also, just as importantly, when they're choosing nest boxes as nesting sites, they also consider box and habitat characteristics for selecting roosting sites. So to study these topics more, I was looking at the Mississippi Alluvial Valley, which I'm sure we're also pretty familiar with if you're in Arkansas. I have it outlined here. And as you can see, it's largely dominated. And if you've ever been there, very largely dominated by row crop agriculture. And you can see the colors on here, red, those are cotton fields, that dark green is soy, and then the yellow is corn, and that light blue is rice. And then just there's a few slivers of bottomland forest that still remains, but this is a very heavily agriculturally dominated landscape. So now getting into my first study, which looked at their box use and nesting success. For this study, my objectives were to estimate rates of box use for nesting and also winter roosting by kestrels, to estimate their nesting success rates and describe some of their nesting ecology, and then to assess some relationships between box and habitat characteristics on nesting, roosting, and nest success. So to do this, this is zoomed in on Jonesboro in Northeast Arkansas. My study sites were all around there in the valley, nothing on the ridge. And I had 40 nest boxes. And in this map, those orange ones, there's 3 that were installed in 2015, and 21 boxes that were installed in 2020, and 16 that were installed in 2022. And some of the grant money I received from the Arkansas Audubon Society went to building those boxes that are still up today. And all these nest boxes were installed on wooden utility poles that were along dirt county roads surrounded by row crop agriculture. And the boxes, the heights of those boxes, they range from 2.6 to 5.7 meters in height. And the orientation that they were facing varied to try to assess how height and orientation affected their use and such. To monitor these boxes, I had a telescoping pole that I'm using there with a little fiber optic camera at the end, and that had Wi-Fi on it, so I can look on my phone actually what was going on in that nest box. So those images there, those are screenshots from my phone, and I could just easily stick that in there. I wouldn't have to climb up on the pole and disturb the nesting attempt too much. I can just quickly do that, so that was really helpful. And that was done once a month in 2021. And then for 3 years in 2022, 3 and 24, they were monitored twice a month during their breeding season, which was March through July. And once I had an active kestrel nesting attempt, I would check those boxes weekly. And then when I would have a non-native bird, such as starlings, a few house sparrows, I would remove that nest, eggs, and any nestlings to discourage their nesting. And then for winter roosting, I did the same thing with that pole, peeking in there in January and February of 2023 and 2024 at night between 6 and 9 to see who is in the nest box. Now getting in just to cover some of the analyses that I did, I built these models, which they had inputs for box use. It was if the kestrel was using the box for nesting, just a yes or a no. And for winter roosting, again, just a yes or a no. And then for nesting success, I also made those models, and the response was daily nest survival. So if the nest was still successful or if it had failed. And in these models, I included a whole bunch of variables to see how it impacted those response variables. So some variables that I included were box age, if it was one of those newly installed boxes in 2020 or an older box installed in 2015. the orientation of the nest box, height of the nest box, and then some habitat features such as the proportion of adjacent crop types, distance to the nearest human structures, houses, barns, equipment sheds. And I use GIS to get the proportion of surrounding forests for the nest box, and then also the proportion of developed lands, which would be people's yards, stuff like that. So now some results. This is a graph of how many nest boxes were used for nesting each year. And then on top, that percentage, that is the percent of boxes that were used by kestrels each of those 4 years. So on average, across those 4 years, 22% of the boxes that I had were used by a kestrel for nesting. Then from those models, age ended up being a strong predictor of their use for nesting. And you can see in these two bar graphs that they're very different. Those older boxes that were installed in 2015 were 5 times more likely to be used for nesting than those newly installed boxes in 2020 or 2022. Also from these models, rice decreased the likelihood of nesting decreased the likelihood of them using a box for nesting. And so as the proportion of rice increase, and this is a square kilometer around the nest box. So as the proportion of rice increased, the probability of the box being used for nesting decreased. And that was a significant trend. And the same thing was true for cotton as well at a steeper degree. So again, as that proportion of cotton around the nest box, that nest box was less likely to be used for nesting. Now looking at nesting success, these are the number of attempts for each year. And then the green, those are the numbers that were successful, and those dark colors, that's the percent that failed. That first year in 2021, all 4 attempts were successfully able to raise fledglings. And then that varied with 2023, only 1 out of 9 attempts being able to produce a fledgling. Those 8 other attempts failed, with a 4-year average of 55% being successful at raising young. So the model for kestrel nesting success, the null was the top model. So none of those variables that I analyzed impacted kestrel nest success. Something else was that was not included in one of my variables. However, there are also a high percentage of boxes that were used for starlings. That's what's signified in the blue here. So we had up to 98%, sorry, of boxes were used by starlings. So just 1 was not used in 2023. And that gave a 4-year average of 90% of our boxes had starlings try to nest in them at some point. And that's a starling nest right there with some little babies. So now winter roosting. It was 2 years that those boxes were checked. 22% were used in 2023, and 27% of those boxes were used by kestrels for winter roosting at night, with an average of 25%. And starlings, there was 1 starling that was seen in 1 box each of those years. So much less starlings for winter roosting than during the breeding season. And the model for winter roosting was also the null model, was top. So none of those variables impacted kestrels using and selecting a box for winter roosting. However, in the model, the distance to human structures had some impact. It wasn't significant, but there was some evidence that it had some impact on their use for nest boxes as winter roosting sites. So as you can see, as the distance to the nearest human structure, as it got further away, the probability of the kestrel using the box as a roosting site increased. So starting to wrap this chapter and study up, the nest box the rate for them using the nest box for nesting at 22% is quite very low compared to other nest box programs in agricultural areas of the US. Those averaged about 45 to 80% of their nest boxes were used for nesting, while only 22% of my boxes were used. Found that age was a strong predictor of box use for nesting, with those boxes that were installed in 2015 being preferred over those more newly installed boxes. And that's not too surprising either, because other studies have found that there's about a 4 to 6 year latency period after these nest boxes were installed for the kestrels to discover the boxes and start nesting in them regularly. And those newer boxes were only monitored for 2 to 4 years, so it's possible that they were still being discovered by the kestrels and that the percentage of them being used might increase to be similar to those older boxes, but in time and maybe a few more years. Also importantly, the proportion of cotton and rice agriculture around those nest boxes decreased the likelihood of the box being used for nesting. For success, at 55% of boxes being successful at raising young, that is among the lowest reported for any kestrel nesting program in North America. There's one other study that had a 51% nest success rate, but yeah, it was very low. And none of the characteristics that I included, the orientation of the nest box, height of it, other crop types, that all had no impact on nest success. It's likely that some factor that I did not statistically include had an impact on that low nest success rate. And it's possible that starlings might be the culprit for that. Kestrels do not build a nest. So if you've noticed, including on this image and some of the other ones, there's a lot of nesting material. It looks like maybe those kestrels built a nest for that. They did not. Those are starling nests, and the kestrels laid their eggs on top of a starling nest. And since I cleared out the starling nests every 2 weeks, the fact that these kestrels laid the eggs on top of a starling nest, that showed that they laid it on top of an active starling nest while the starling was still building it. So it's possible that they were competing with the starlings for the box as a nesting site. And importantly, there was a recent study that found that when a starling is nesting in the same nest box as a kestrel in that same breeding season, that led to a 26% decrease in kestrel nest success. And specifically, that study found that a normal nest success rate of 78%, if a starling nested in that box, reduced down to 52%. And I thought that was very surprising, because 52 is awfully close to the 55% nest success rate that I found in my boxes. And 85% of the kestrel nesting attempts that I had a starling nesting within that same box during the same nesting season. And this fact of starlings and kestrels competing for nesting sites is a topic that's still heavily debated, actually, in the world of kestrel biology, because there hasn't been a lot of direct evidence showing kestrels out pushing out starlings or starlings pushing out kestrels, vice versa. It's possible. We don't really know exactly how starlings are leading to decreased nest success. We just know there's that correlation of when starlings are around, that leads to lower nest success from kestrels. And this is a little video that I did. This is a little side note. I was curious about those low nesting success rates, especially that year where we only had one successful attempt. And so I put in a few cameras in these nest boxes, and I recorded 2 observations that were not reported before ever that I was able to publish. This is one, and this is a video of a starling removing an abandoned kestrel egg from a nest box. And this was abandoned. I believe it was 2 days since the adult kestrel was last in that nest box. So this egg was sitting in there for for about 2 days, and then I saw a starling hop into the box. So it goes in there, checks it out, starts to peck around a little bit, seeing what's going on. Jump ahead a little bit. Starts to peck around. You can see it punctured a hole in the egg already. And some yolk is pouring out as well. So that shows that that egg is not very developed. It probably just naturally failed, wasn't able to hatch. A little bit more. And there it goes. So that was the first time that there has been direct evidence of a starling disrupting a kestrel nesting attempt. It wasn't an active attempt. It was, I mean, that egg was already not going to hatch anyway, but that's a proof of concept that starlings are capable of removing kestrel eggs from a nesting site. See if I can get out. Okay. The second video, this kind of gives it away right away, but was a video of two kestrels, a male and a female, eating a kestrel egg within a nest box. These kestrels were not banded or marked in any way, so I can't tell if these were the parents of the egg, but it was a male and female eating an egg. And this egg, too, was abandoned. I believe it was, I think, 8 hours since there was a previous kestrel that visited that nest box. And again, you can see that this egg is mostly yolk. And at this time, these eggs should have hatched. So the fact that it was oak yolk, that showed that the egg did not develop at all and that they were eating it. Who knows why? This has never been observed that kestrels eating their own egg or anything. There has been instances of kestrels eating one of the nestlings, a sickly one that was small, and then being cannibalized by their siblings and stuff. But adults eating a kestrel egg, that has never been reported before. And that was really surprising to me because a lot of these times I would be checking these nest boxes and I'd be like, wow, like there's just what happened to the eggs? There's no sign of them. They just disappeared. I assume that was a predator. Maybe a snake came in there and ate the eggs and just left no trace. But now with these two videos, I have to also consider maybe the adults ate an egg that was unsuccessful. Maybe starlings came in there and removed eggs as well. So you can't just assume that predators removed the eggs. There could be something else happening there. Okay, and now for the winter roosting, to wrap that up again. The rate of use for winter roosting was 25% a quarter, and that was about the same for nesting at 22%. And that's a little surprising. I thought there would be possibly more use, maybe because kestrel abundance is a lot higher during the wintering period than in the summer. As I'm sure a lot of you guys might have noticed, a lot of the northern birds migrate down to spend their winters here in Arkansas. Again, much lower competition with starlings. There was only one box that was used for winter roosting. And the distance to human structures may have some influence. And that's not too surprising either, considering that human structures and vegetation were found in other studies to be their preferred nesting site. These kestrels might be preferring to nest in those human structures rather than a nest box when they're available close by. But it's also important that they have the opportunity to use these nest boxes to roost in the winter, so they don't need to travel as far from their winter territory to get to those human structures. They can instead go to someplace close by, such as a nest box, and not expend as much energy traveling to their roosting site. Now, changing gears into study two, looking at their impacts on crop pests. The objective of this study was to see if the presence of nesting kestrels had an impact on the abundance, diversity, and biomass of rodents, birds, and insects by kestrels. So to do this, I quantified those metrics and I surveyed occupied nest boxes that had kestrels nesting at them. I had 9 of those. I surveyed unoccupied sites, which just had a nest box that was not being used by a kestrel. I had 61 of those. And then for each occupied site, I had a corresponding random site, which was a utility pole that did not have a nest box and did not have any kestrels breeding near there. And that acted as a control, as a location that never had breeding kestrels at that to compare. And I hypothesized that the sites with nesting kestrels would have lower abundances in biomass and such of pests compared to unoccupied sites and random sites. So to do this, I used same study area, same nest boxes, and those white dots, those are those random locations, and the black dots are the ones with the actual nest box. And I surveyed these animals mid-May through July in those 3 summers. So to survey for rodents, I use these Sherman traps, they're called. That's that little metal box down there. These are non-lethal traps. And I had 50 of those baited with peanut butter and oats. And they were set up for 3 nights and 2 days. And they were checked twice a day. And that was along the a 25-meter, 250-meter transect in that strip of vegetation between the crop fields and those dirt roads. And when I did capture a rodent, I would weigh them to get that biomass estimate, then also give them an ear tag, which you can see in those photos there that had a unique number on it. And I use that to get recapture rates and use that to get the abundance of rodents at that site. I also tried to measure vegetation to see how that would impact rodents because some sites were like mowed grass, very short, and then some had really quite dense and tall vegetation. Bird surveys, I conducted a 10-minute point count at each site, recording all birds that I saw and heard. And those were all conducted in the morning when I had good weather. And I considered pest species, blackbirds, red-winged blackbirds, grackles, and such, pigeons, collared doves, rock dove as well, house sparrows, and starlings. And I surveyed each site twice a year, and I used the survey that had the highest number of birds in my analyses to more represent a like the carrying capacity, the highest number of birds at that site. For insects, I did sweep netting, which is what that person is doing there with a regular canvas butterfly net, again in that strip of vegetation between the crops and the road. And I did that in 2 10-meter transects. And I did that at each site once a year in the morning or evening. And once I collected those pests, I took them back to the lab, froze them to kill them, and then I sorted pests from non-pests, dried them, and then weighed them to get those biomass estimates and abundance estimates. And I also identified them down to species for pests and then family for non-pests. And again, I tried to measure vegetation visibility to incorporate that as a impactful variable. This is an example of an occupied site that I would survey. I had that 250-meter long transect with the Sherman traps, those 2 10-meter transects for sweep netting, and also point counts at the nest box. The statistical analyses I did again, built similar models using those abundance, biomass, and diversity metrics as the response variables. I didn't do abundance everything for each different taxonomic group. That was kind of a little mixed up a little bit. And I didn't just do pest species, I also did total birds and total insects. I included similar variables, but also site type, if it was an occupied site, if it was unoccupied or one of those random ones, and then that vegetation visibility index, and then similar habitat features like the proportion of surrounding crops, distance to human structures, surrounding forests, and the proportion of developed lands. So rodent abundance, that top model indicated that survey site type, if it was occupied, unoccupied, or random, was strongly impacting rodent abundance. Also, if there was presence of corn, rice, and soy. And you can see in this chart here, in all these charts, if it has a little asterisk, that means there is a significant relationship. So here, there's rodent abundance was significantly reduced at occupied sites compared to unoccupied sites, and also when compared to those random sites. And specifically, occupied sites had 80% lower rodent abundance than unoccupied sites and 85% lower rodent abundance compared to random sites. For rodent biomass, there's a similar trend. Occupied sites had significantly lower estimates compared to unoccupied and random sites. And the top model for rodent diversity did not contain survey site type, so the presence of kestrels did not impact rodent diversity, just abundance and biomass. For birds, kestrels had no effect on their pest bird abundance, diversity, or total bird abundance, so kestrels did not impact birds in this system. For insects, these results were a little wonky. Comparing occupied sites to unoccupied sites, kestrels decreased pest insect abundance, but when compared to random sites actually had significantly lower insect abundances compared to those occupied sites. For pest insect biomass, a similar trend, significantly lower compared to unoccupied sites, but equivalent when compared to random sites. Pest insect diversity. This had occupied sites having significantly lower diversity compared to unoccupied and random sites. Total insect biomass was similar to pest insect biomass, again, with occupied sites being significantly lower to unoccupied, but being equivalent to random sites. And this is a panel here of all of the pest results, just for pests, none of the total ones. I just want to highlight these three specifically. Because these three had significantly lower abundances for occupied sites when compared to unoccupied and when compared to random sites. So that's rodent abundance, rodent biomass, and insect family diversity for pests. So in summation, they were able to impact rodents and that they were effective at managing rodent pests and row crop agriculture in the lower Mississippi Alluvial Valley. Specifically, they decreased rodent abundance by 80 to 85% and decreased rodent biomass by 43 to 87%. So quite large impacts. And this is similar to what was found in those Michigan cherry orchards. And they also found that they were particularly good at reducing vole abundances. And I found that as well. There weren't any voles found at sites that had kestrels compared to other sites. That's a fun photo of a kestrel that got a vole. And then for birds, again, they had no impact on birds. However, in this photo, you can see that they do predate red-winged blackbirds specifically. And this is contrary to the other studies that found that they were able to reduce bird pests. However, those were bird pests in the context of fruit orchards. So these were mainly robins and bluebirds. And this is a different agricultural system. And so these pests are different. And it's possible that kestrels may be able to reduce robin abundances, but red-winged blackbirds specifically, they might not be able to. And red-winged blackbirds actually made up 53% of the total birds that I detected in my surveys. So if they didn't impact red-winged blackbirds, that would have an outsized effect on all the other different bird species and metrics. For insects, like I said, these results were a little wonky with the results, the random sites having lower abundances for abundance, biomass, and but not diversity. Then when looking at specifically the insect results a little bit closer, most of the pest insects that I had were katydids and grasshoppers. So you can see 52% were katydids and 17% of those insects were grasshoppers. And those two specifically, katydids and grasshoppers are more seasonal insects. Their abundances increase later in the summer. So one of the pitfalls of this study was that I only surveyed sites once a year. So it's possible that surveying sites multiple times throughout the summer, that could get a more accurate picture of what was going on in the insect population since they do change throughout the year. So more rigorous survey methods, surveying them multiple times a year, doing different survey methods other than sweep netting. You can see this kestrel here is eating a dragonfly. Doing that sweep netting, that doesn't survey for dragonflies. Doing a full insect survey, that's really difficult to do because there's so many different types of insects. And you'd have to deploy a lot of different survey methods to get a real clear picture of what they're having an impact on their biomass and abundance. And then doing direct diet studies might be a way to get around this, doing um, studying their pellets that they produce, seeing what insect bits are within there. And then something that's been talked about quite a bit at this conference that I'm at is doing metabarcoding to seeing what they're eating. I tried to do this. I collected poop from kestrels, nestlings, and adults to try to see what prey DNA was present in their poo, but that didn't work out because it was very degraded and stuff. But I actually saw presentation today, which I wish I saw a few years ago. And they found that for raptors doing metabarcoding, because it's a difficult thing for raptors compared to other birds, but they found if you swab the talons and the beaks of raptors, that's the best way to do metabarcoding, not using the poo, because as you can see in this photo, they use their bills a lot and talons to rip apart their prey, and they don't lick their lips or anything. They have bits of DNA all over those talons and beaks that hasn't gone through the digestive tract and hasn't been degraded as much. So there should be some more recent papers coming out in the future of people surveying their diet through doing that swabbing of the DNA on the bills and talons. Again, if I knew this 2, 3 years ago, I would have tried that, but that'll be someone else to do at a later time. So in conclusion, kestrels will successfully nest in nest boxes in agricultural areas of the lower Mississippi Alluvial Valley, and they will importantly use them all year round as winter roosting sites in the non-breeding season as well. I found that age was an important factor for box use for nesting, with them preferring those older boxes than those newer ones. And importantly, that they are less likely to use nest boxes that are close to cotton and rice. Also, the nest success that I reported, that is among the lowest reported in the literature. That's of something that should be looked into more as to why exactly that is. But it's likely this was not looked into, but it's possible that those starlings might be impacting the nest success of these kestrels. But again, more research is needed to see exactly what is going on with those interactions there, or if it's something else. So in summation two, I have some advice. If you're interested in putting up some nest boxes in the lower Mississippi Alluvial Valley, wherever they're at, this is probably true also in Arkansas, but I didn't have any boxes that were installed less than 8.5 feet. So as long as they're at least 8.5 feet in height, I didn't find that had any impact on their use for nesting or nesting success. I've climbed up on ladders aplenty to install these nest boxes. Some were 14 feet high. So you don't need to climb up quite that high to do that. You can 8.5 feet should be sufficient to be able to do that. Orientation also doesn't matter. So if you want to install it facing east, that's okay. That won't impact their use or or nesting success. And also try not to install them near cotton or rice fields because they prefer not to nest there. However, cotton and rice, that did not impact their nesting success rate. So that's a good thing. But are less likely to use boxes near those fields for nesting. Also, maybe try not to install them too close to human structures if you want to try to make these boxes really useful for winter roosting. Having some distance might be good for that. Also, kestrels can effectively control rodent pests and row crop agriculture as well, and possibly insects, but that needs to have some more research to get a bit more clear picture of that. Specifically, kestrels can reduce rodent abundance by 85% and reduce rodent biomass by 87%. So take-home message, kestrels can be used for integrated pest management and row crop agriculture of the Lower Mississippi Alluvial Valley by installing nest boxes, and they will in turn help to control those rodent pests. And that is a source of an alternative, environmentally friendly method of pest control, reducing our reliance upon pesticides. And it will also benefit kestrels by adding additional nesting opportunities and winter roosting opportunities as well. This will also strengthen farmers' connections with their local wildlife, fostering a deeper appreciation and understanding for their surrounding ecosystems, knowing that the birds around them are providing some economic benefits to them and helping them in their protection of their crops. So with that, that is the end of my presentation here. I just want to shout out to some of the people that helped to work on this project because I had a lot of help along the way. My committee members, the people at Arkansas State who helped to guide me through this, my field techs and interns who are out in the field helping me trap all those small mammals, check all those boxes, everything like that, my family, my friends, my dog, and then all of the volunteers that came out to help and my lab mates. And of course, my funding sources, the Arkansas Audubon Society, the Arkansas Hawking Association, um, ABI, the Arkansas State Biosciences Institute, Arkansas Game and Fish, and Arkansas State University. And with that, I am open to questions. Hopefully, are we on time? Yeah, we have some time for questions. See in the chat. Okay, if anyone has anything, I guess they can just unmute themselves and feel free to ask.
I have a question about the house, the birdhouses.
Yes.
Do you think the delay in them accepting the birdhouses was because the wood was new? In other words, did you try building any out of already weathered wood?
Yeah, that's a good question. I didn't make any out of weathered wood. It was all new pine wood. So potentially, yeah, if it's more weathered, it kind of looks more like the utility pole. It might blend in a little bit more. That might be something that they might look for. But yeah, it might just take some time for them to notice them, those boxes. So if you put one up and it takes a few years for one to be used, just have some patience. It might take a little while.
I have a question. Hello.
Yes.
I have a question about predator guards.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I didn't have any
And
predator guards.
right, but so if you had tried some with predator guards, would you think there may have been greater success?
Possibly. Yeah, I did. I mean, direct evidence of predation, there were a lot of the times that the nests failed. It was during that egg stage when they were still in the eggs. There was one time that I opened a box and there was a big rat snake in there. So snakes do go up, crawl up the utility poles, and they can be a predator for them. But yes, that is a good idea if you're going to do that on your land to try to do predator guards. I had permission from the utility pole company to put the boxes up on their poles, and with that, they we didn't have permission to put the predator guards on. But yes, that would be a good idea. because raccoons can predate them, snakes, yeah, those kind of, yeah, they could do that.
Thanks.
Mhm.
Hi, do you think that the heavy use of the landscape for agriculture and the spraying that goes on, was that comparable to other sites where, they're doing studies, or are we
Mhm.
really dousing the environment more than lots of places?
Yeah, that's a really good question. That's something that I had when I was thinking about setting up this project. I was very naive and I was like, oh, well, I'm sure there's some national database of pesticide use because I'm sure people keep track of how much of pesticides and what kind are applied on the landscape, but that data doesn't exist. And I thought, oh, maybe I can survey farmers and see how much pesticides they use, but that's not information that they would give up. So honestly, we really don't know how much pesticides and what exactly kinds are being used on the landscape. We just need to see from environmental testing on what's out there. So I wasn't able to directly incorporate that into this study, but possibly. I mean, I know those cherry orchards, they do a lot of pesticide application as well to try to get rid of insects and stuff, but I mean, it is very intense too on in the Delta. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there has been some studies that looked at pesticide implications with kestrels, and they didn't find that they're too sensitive. Rodenticides are always a worry with raptors, with rat poison and such, but again, that's not something I could test. There was M. Donahue, I'm sure many of you guys are familiar with her too, with her work with shrikes. She looks at neonicotinoids, which are a type of pesticide in the same system, and those shrikes are similarly eating the same prey that kestrels are eating. And she found high prevalences of neonicotinoids or whatever, but she didn't find that they had any real negative impact on shrikes. So it's possible that they are present on the landscape, but kestrels too. I don't know. They're very different um, taxonomically birds, but it's possible that they might not be really affected by those pesticides. But again, that would be a really good study topic to look into to see from blood and eggshells to see if there's any impact of pesticides.
Okay. Any other questions, guys?